All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Cody Bowles, and I'm responding to our Chapter 13 assignment over curriculum development for ED/AD 854. And going to be talking about several things with curriculum today. One of the first things we were asked is, what definition of curriculum do you prefer and why? And one to look at is that Lunenburg and Orenstein define curriculum as a plan for action, a written document which includes strategies for achieving desired goals or ends. So basically, in looking at this, kind of in the behavioral and manager type outlook, curriculum needs to be, it's basically something that we develop as teachers or curriculum directors or others, and it's a plan for how we're going to go about teaching our students in the best way possible, and by all means. Sometimes that may include written out plans, or curriculum overall, looking at several different aspects of what we're going to be covering. We also include strategies in that. Basically, what are ways in which we're going to get across the information students are going to know. Is that going to be through projects, quizzes, tests, daily assignments, whatever it may be, all the different strategies that are going to be needed for students to achieve and get and meet what they are expected to meet. Also, I'm a big believer in that curriculum can also be viewed in terms of a specific subject matter. I think you look at math, science, English, obviously each subject in itself emphasizes its own concepts or knowledge. So I think it's really important as we look at each subject, and with that, each subject matter is going to have its own curriculum. And within that, teachers and those working in those fields have to have a set of strategies and goals that are specific with those students, whether math, whatever it may be, within science and English. And that's really important. And also, we recognize in that definition, we recognize subjects and grades. So a lot of times we separate out curriculum by certain subjects and by grade level. So, for instance, 7th grade I teach is life science, and then 8th grade goes into earth science. So we're recognizing the different levels, but at the same time different subject matter, each of which has its own set of goals or end means for what we look at with curriculum. The second thing is, what approach to curriculum do you prefer and why? So I look at this, there's not really, I don't think there's really one in which I can really say I really prefer this one over the other, and kind of putting myself, obviously in a administrator's role. One of the first things I looked at was basically the managerial approach. I think this one has a lot of things that, as a principal, as the head of a school, you have to be in a manager role, and basically, you have to look at everyone with regards to curriculum has to be involved. Curriculum has to be organized. It has to be supervised at all times. We have to make sure that our teachers are following through on certain things, that our students are learning what they're supposed to be learning, and I want to make sure that everyone, including myself, is involved with decisions in regards to curriculum. At the same time, in that managerial approach, I want curriculum that's going to be ever-changing with new information. It's going to be innovative. I want my curriculum director, supervisor, whichever title it may be, to facilitate those changes. I'm going to be overlooking that, but as the manager of a school in the principal role, I want to facilitate those changes and give teachers all available outlets in that regard. Also, I want my school to be progressive. As we go through a technology and it gets greater, I want those tools available for all students and teachers, so that way, once again, going back to what we talked about in the very first one, we meet those desired goals or standards that we need to within the curriculum. And as curriculum plans change, we can implement those to the best of our ability. And that's one thing I think in that managerial approach that's really important. As a principal, we oversee those things. We also have people below us that are going to take care of that, and we rely on them. That's why we keep it organized. We supervise what needs to be done from curriculum director or supervisor as we look at it. I think the other approach that I think is really important, and what I feel is another good way to look at approach to curriculum, is the humanistic approach, because obviously, being in education, we have to be human. We have to realize students' needs, teachers' needs, and different things there. And so we have to look at the social aspects of curriculum and instruction overall. And with that, it's important that we stress lessons that are going to apply to real-life situations. I think it's important that we have group-involved projects. Field trips have their place in any type of curriculum. We want to offer, and I want to offer, as many types of experiences as possible for all students, so that once again we meet those desired goals. Also, curriculum needs to stress critical thinking. Those are really important life skills as well, going back to that anytime we look at it, We have to really make sure our students are able to problem solve. Overall, the curriculum needs to be student involved. We want to keep them involved. We don't want them in their chairs sitting and listening to lectures every single day. That's one of my big philosophies. I like to get students involved with science, making sure that they're being active learners and not just sitting on their hands every single day. Also, we want teachers to build honest and meaningful relationships. I know some schools it's harder than that than others. I know the text that I mentioned, obviously in inner city Chicago, New York, that might be a little more difficult because of the nature of the student body you might have. But as much as possible, we want students to build relationships with teachers and vice versa, because that's only going to strengthen that humanistic approach to curriculum. And we want teachers, and I want teachers to feel as if they have a strong input in curriculum planning. They are the people that are in the classrooms every day. I'm entrusting, and we're entrusting them to make the best decisions, just as my principal and superintendent do every single day based on what students need and what should be taught. And I want teachers to feel that input as much as possible. And I think that's really important. So I think the managerial approach and the humanistic, kind of a combination of the two, I think are, for me, the most important approaches to curriculum. Number 3, in developing curriculum, what criteria for selecting content are important. So we look at what's important for selecting content. I think there's several things, and the text listed several here, but there's a few that I think are really important. I think one in particular, looking at curriculum, is scope and sequence. We want to know, and a teacher should have an idea of how in depth they're going to cover, how much content in that subject matter you're going to cover. Also, at what levels of knowledge are you going to be hitting on as regards to sequence, and how are you going to build on that knowledge? Obviously, sequentially, it's important that we follow a sequence in our curriculum. Math in particular, they follow a certain sequence, and everything builds on each other. Science in itself, I teach life science, earth science. Those two subjects are different, but we still build on skills from one year to the next. And within the class year itself, we're building on previous knowledge. One of the things, the scientific inquiry is something in a science classroom that is constantly built on and reviewed and going over. We want it to be a cumulative process, and that's really important for developing any type of content. A third one is looking at what new knowledge is available. I think anytime in a school, in a classroom, you have to keep the curriculum up to date. If you're dating things back, and if some of your tools are videotapes and those things, I think your curriculum are missing out on some of the new technology and some other things that are important for students to be aware of, what new content is available. Science in particular, there's always constant updates and new things being created. It's important we keep up with that. Also, another one that's important is validity. We want to make sure that we either bulk up, trim down what is the most important things, what is most valid for students to know. Obviously, we base a lot of that around, in this case, NISA, what's important for them to know standard-wise, what do they have to walk away with from our classrooms. Also, our content, in that case, should have clear objectives and goals on an everyday basis, every chapter or unit basis as well, so that we're meeting those end goals by the time we're done. And another one is learnability. We want to make sure the content that's being taught is being taught at the right level, and that's really important. We want to make sure that as I'm teaching 7th graders and 8th graders, obviously what I present and how I present things will be different than how I approach my senior students, because they're obviously at that level. When they're seniors, they're able to take in content a little bit differently than what a 7th or 8th grade student might. So we have to make sure that each grade level, the content is selected and taught, and textbook information is available, and what is they're able to take in. And also we want to base experiences for that learner that are understandable for them. So real life experience we can relate to the students, that is really important as well. The fourth question, look at it as a curriculum leader, how would you involve teachers and students in the curriculum implementation process? So I think the first part of that is involving teachers in the curriculum process. Ronald Dahl from the text base said he viewed teachers needing to be involved in every phase. I completely agree with that statement, and the fact that teachers obviously have to have a major role in curriculum planning and aligning with that everything to standards, planning goals, the materials, the strategies, all the methods involved. Teachers are obviously a big part of that. I want to entrust in my teachers that they're going to make the best decisions about how the student is going to gather that content, that material, and with what things are they going to need. So teachers have to play a major role because they are in the classroom every day and they're presenting the material, and they are basically hired in that specific role, depending on what their degree is in, to teach that material. So we have to, and I have to entrust in them that they're going to know exactly what they need to do. Teachers should also meet with other content teachers. I'm a big believer that when it comes to teachers being involved with curriculum, teachers meeting with fellow science teachers or English teachers or whatever it may be, they develop really good relationships to really develop the curriculum and the content as it pertains to the standards. Also, teachers are there. They are effective evaluators. They know based on what they're covering, depending on how the students obviously test out how they're taking the material, is that curriculum, is that content meeting the end goal? Is it effective or isn't it? So obviously my view is that teachers are very much a big part in being active in curriculum. On the student side of things, obviously students are there to really, their biggest thing, they don't really know it, but they're providing feedback for teachers on curriculum. Biggest thing is through evaluations of tests and assessments, and maybe you send out end of the year evaluations. I always send out end of the year evaluations to my students saying, hey, what did you think went well? What would you think would be some recommendations on for next year's students? Overall rate these different things of the class. And I try to get a feedback from students based on the content and the curriculum being taught. Just get an idea of maybe things I need to adjust or other aspects of the curriculum. But really, they're exposed to instruction every day. They're the ones getting the strategies, the content, and it's really important that they have a big role in curriculum. And the biggest thing is that if implementation of curriculum and content is given correctly, it should reach across and should differentiate to all students, and every student should be involved in that curriculum as much as possible. So the implementation is effective. Students are going to receive that curriculum much better. So they are a major role in that because they're in the classroom, they're sitting here every day getting that curriculum, no matter what it may be, science, English, math. They're evaluated, and they're evaluating us on a daily basis. And the fifth part is why is change difficult to implement in schools? And speaking from experience here, we've tried implementing various changes through my 6 years here at the school, and there are teachers that are always on board, and there are teachers that sometimes really don't relish any type of change. And there are several reasons for that. I think looking at some, I think number one, teachers and staff get very comfortable. I think I'm guilty of that sometimes myself. I get comfortable in my ways sometimes, and there are other teachers, especially ones that maybe been around longer than I have, that get very comfortable and are okay with how the school is running, even though there might be issues. They're not necessarily concerned with those because maybe their classroom is just fine, but the overall school facility is not running as we need. So staff believe that everything is fine. Everything just needs to be maintained. There's no need for that type of change right now. I think another thing is that teachers see changes, might see changes as they work, but then they figure, well, next year, come on that time, it's going to be gone. It's going to be off the table. So even though we might change something, I think teachers get frustrated with the fact that, well, next year at this time, it's going to be off, and we won't discuss it again. I think that's part of one of the things I can see here at this school. Sometimes we implement things and we'll be really gung-ho about it for a while, and then all of a sudden we won't come back to it. And that's frustrating even for me, as a younger teacher. I think it's important you stick with those changes, and if they're not working, then you go back and adjust as you need to. I think also a lot of teachers see change as more work. I've mentioned in a couple different assignments, we started an academic success program this year. A lot of teachers felt that the program of feeding students in to finish homework on a daily basis for those that don't turn it in was just adding more to a busy schedule, and they're not really relishing that change. And we're trying to really change a culture for some students of turning in work. Some teachers don't necessarily see it that way. And in that same realm of things, some teachers feel like, I got to learn a whole new set of skills, learn about more new resources, and I don't have the time to fit that in. So that becomes a hindrance on making changes. Another thing is, along the same lines, is that teachers sometimes like to play it safe. They're kind of laying low. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to see those changes made because that might make them have to kind of come out of their shell a little bit more. That can influence how things, are changing. And kind of lastly, sometimes if we implement changes really fast, it's presented at the beginning of the school year, and it's something teachers feel could have been brought to the table middle of the previous school year. They might think things are going too quickly. Changes are being made too fast, and they're not willing to integrate with those changes. And I think that can influence whether it's curriculum-based, whether it's content of the subject. Sometimes we feel those things are coming on much too quickly. So overall, I think looking at curriculum, obviously as from a principal role or an administrator's role, we play a big role in facilitating that. Teachers have to be a major part of any type of curriculum. Students are evaluating our curriculum and our content all the time. And we have to make sure as teachers, as staff, as a school, if we're all on the same page, we have to be willing, no matter if we agree or disagree, to make sure that we're going through or making changes that are best for the students. Because I think in all, we have to remember that we are all in this for what is going to benefit students the most, as opposed to what's going to make more work for me. And I think that's, as teachers, we always look at those things on a daily basis. So that's what I have for Chapter 13. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week.